There is a heating system built from flat stones, a bag of mortar, and a stack of cinder blocks that will keep a floor warm for 18 hours after a single fire. It costs about $30 in materials if you scavenge the stone, $50 if you buy everything new. It uses no electricity, no boiler, no thermostat, no moving parts of any kind. 90% of homes in South Korea still use a version of this system today. The Korean government submitted it to UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage. Archaeologists have excavated working versions from sites dated to the Bronze Age, around 900 BC. That is not an 800-year-old design. That is a 3,000-year-old design. And it does not heat the air, it heats the floor. The stone absorbs the heat from a single short fire, stores it, and releases it upward through your feet, your legs, your entire body for half a day or longer. The average American household spent $976 on heating last winter alone. Over a 30-year mortgage, that is north of $29,000. Exposed to the weather, exposed to rate hikes, exposed to grid failure. A $30 floor does not care about any of that. You have never heard of it. That is not an accident. The answer starts about 2,000 years ago, in the northern Korean peninsula and Manchuria, in a kingdom called Goguryeo. Winters there drop well below -20 Celsius. The wind moves across open plains with nothing to stop it, and the people who lived there had a problem that every homesteader in Montana, Minnesota, or Maine would recognize. An open fire throws most of its heat straight up and out. You burn through your wood supply, your walls stay cold, your floor stays freezing, you sleep on the ground, which means you sleep on ice. So they did something no other civilization on Earth did at that scale. They stopped trying to heat the air. They heated the floor instead. The system is called Ondol. The word comes from the Korean Goguryeo, which means baked stone. Here is how it works. You build a firebox on the outside wall of a room. Below the floor, you lay a network of horizontal channels, called gorai, made from stone or brick. You cap those channels with thick, flat stone slabs, called gudyoljang. Then you seal the surface with clay. On the opposite wall, you build a chimney. When you light a fire in the firebox, the hot smoke and gases do not rise straight up. They travel horizontally through the channels beneath the floor. The stone slabs above absorb that heat. Then the smoke exits through the chimney on the far side, meaning the floor becomes the heater. Stone has enormous thermal mass. It absorbs heat slowly, stores it deeply, and releases it over hours. A well-built Ondol floor, fired once in the evening, stays warm through the night and into the following afternoon. 12 to 18 hours of radiant heat from a single burn. To your hand, it feels like a warm countertop. At the molecular level, the stone lattice is doing what no forced air furnace can replicate. It is radiating infrared energy directly into your body, not warming the air around you first, not blowing heated air through ducts, direct thermal transfer, floor to skin. The physics do not negotiate. This is not a forgotten prototype. By the Joseon dynasty, which ran from 1392 to 1897, Ondol construction had become a refined craft. Builders understood flue geometry, stone thickness, chimney draft ratios. They knew that if you placed the firebox in the kitchen, the same fire that cooked dinner also heated the bedroom floor next door. One fire, two functions, no wasted energy. Every Korean home had one. The entire culture organized itself around it. Furniture stayed low to the ground. Families ate on the floor, slept on the floor, because the floor was the warmest place in the house. The eldest family member got the warmest spot, closest to the firebox. Guests were seated by floor temperature. Social hierarchy was literally mapped onto the thermal gradient of the stone. A royal record from the reign of King Sejong, the same king who created the Korean alphabet, documents Ondol being prescribed as medical treatment. The king ordered a provincial official to let a sick man recover on the heated floor. That was in 1430. A heated stone floor as medicine. 600 years before the modern wellness industry discovered infrared saunas. A 4th century mural inside Anektum No. 3, a Goguryeo royal burial site in present-day North Korea, depicts an Ondol system in operation. That is not a footnote from some obscure journal. That is archaeological evidence painted on the wall of a king's tomb. And here is the part that stays with most people. In South Korea today, 90% of residential buildings still use a version of underfloor heating. They have modernized the fuel source, hot water through embedded pipes instead of wood smoke through stone channels, but the core principle has not changed. Floor first. Radiant heat, thermal mass, the same engineering the Goguryeo kingdom used 20 centuries ago. So why does the average American home still heat from the ceiling down? The modern radiant floor heating industry generates nearly $5 billion a year globally. A hydronic radiant floor system, the closest commercial equivalent to Ondol, costs between $7 and $17 per square foot to install. For a 1,500 square foot home, that is $10,500 to $25,500 before you buy the boiler. The boiler adds another $3,200 to $9,000. Total installed cost for a whole house system runs $13,700 to $43,000, and that does not include maintenance, electricity to run the circulating pump, or the annual cost of fuel to heat the water. A traditional Ondol built from stone and clay and cinder block costs $30 to $50 in materials. It requires no pump, no electricity, no boiler, no annual service contract. The fuel is wood, which costs $200 a cord delivered, or $0 if you have trees. The system has no moving parts, nothing to break, nothing to replace, nothing to subscribe to. So why has no mainstream American home builder ever offered a masonry radiant floor as a standard option? Why does every new construction come with a forced air furnace, a propane hookup, or electric baseboard heat? Why is the heating equipment industry worth over $30 billion a year in the United States? Why does the system that works for 2,000 years never make it into the catalog? You already know the answer. Here is everything you need. For a single-room Ondol, roughly 100 square feet, which is the right scale for a workshop, a cabin addition, or a sleeping room in an off-grid build, the shopping list is short. 12 to 16 standard cinder blocks. Any hardware store? $1, $25 to $1.75 each at Home Depot or Lowe's. That is $15 to $28. These form the walls of your flue channels. One 60-pound bag of mortar mix. About $5 at Home Depot. Quikrete or Secrete, either works. You need this to seal the channel joints and bond the stone slabs. Flat stone slabs or concrete pavers for the floor surface, 2-inch thick minimum. If you scavenge flagstone or flat field stone, free. If you buy concrete stepping stones, roughly $2 to $4 each. You need 8 to 12 depending on your room size. That is $16 to $48 at the high end. One section of 6-inch single wall stovepipe for the chimney. $8 to $15 at Home Depot or Tractor Supply. Fire rated. Clay or natural clay soil for the final floor seal. Free if you dig. $5 to $8 for a bag of fire clay from a pottery supply if you do not have access. Total cost, $30 to $50 if you scavenge stone, $60 to $90 if you buy everything retail. Either way, you are looking at less than 1% of what a commercial radiant floor installation would run you. Step 1, excavate. You need a flat level surface roughly 4 inches below your intended finished floor height. If you are building on a dirt floor in a workshop or cabin, this is straightforward. Dig down, tamp the soil firm, check for level with a 4-foot spirit level. If you are building on an existing concrete slab, you will build up instead of digging down. Lay a bed of tamped gravel or sand 2 inches for drainage and leveling. The surface needs to be flat enough that a marble would not roll. That is your test. Step 2. Build the flue channels. Lay your cinder blocks on their sides in parallel rows, spaced about 10 to 12 inches apart. These create the horizontal channels, the Goguryeo, through which hot gases will travel. You want 3 to 5 parallel channels running the length of the room. Run a string line to keep your rows straight. Mortar each block to the next with a 1/4 inch bead. When the mortar is right, it holds its shape when you run a finger through it. Too wet and it sags. Too dry and it crumbles. The channels should slope gently upward from the firebox end toward the chimney end. About 1 inch of rise per 4 feet of run. This draft angle is critical. Without it, the smoke stalls. With too much, the heat moves through too fast and exits before the stone can absorb it. 1 inch per 4 feet. That is the sweet spot the Joseon builders figured out through 500 years of iteration. Use a level and a shim to check your slope at every block. Step 3. Build the firebox. On one end of the room, create an opening roughly 12 inches wide and 10 inches tall using cinder blocks or fire brick. This is your agungi. It should open to the outside or to an adjacent room, never into the heated room itself. The fire burns here. The smoke enters the channels from this point. Step 4. Set the floor stones. Lay your flat stone slabs or concrete pavers across the top of the cinder block channel walls. They should rest firmly with no wobble. Mortar the joints between slabs. You want a continuous surface with no gaps where smoke could leak upward into the room. This is the most important seal in the entire build. If smoke leaks up, the system fails and becomes dangerous. Test every joint. Press mortar into every crack. Let it cure for 24 hours minimum. Step 5. Apply the clay seal. Mix your clay or fire clay with water to a thick paste. Spread it across the entire stone surface in a layer about half an inch to 1 inch thick. This serves three purposes. It seals any remaining micro gaps, it adds thermal mass, and it creates a smooth, radiant surface. Traditional Korean builders used a specific clay called hwangto, a yellow earth clay. Any natural clay works. The key is that it must be free of organic material. No roots, no leaves, no topsoil. Step 6. Install the chimney. On the opposite end from the firebox, connect your stovepipe to the final flue channel. The chimney should rise at least 4 feet above the roofline for proper draft. Seal the connection point with mortar. A taller chimney produces stronger draft, which means more consistent airflow through the channels. Step 7. Cure and test. Build a small, slow fire in the firebox. Do not start with a roaring blaze. A small fire for 2 hours. Let the mortar and clay cure gradually with heat. If you see smoke leaking from the floor surface, mark the spot, let it cool, and reseal with more clay. Repeat until the surface is completely smoke tight. On your second test fire, place your hand flat on the floor surface after the fire has burned for 1 hour. You should feel warmth spreading evenly across the stone. The area closest to the firebox will be warmest. The area near the chimney will be cooler, but still noticeably warm. Traditional Korean builders called this temperature gradient the art of the Ondol. The warmest zone was reserved for the eldest family member. The cooler zone was for storage or younger children. Here's the part that ruins 90% of builds. The channel height. If your Goguryeo channels are too tall, more than about 8 inches, the hot gases rise to the top of the channel and never make full contact with the floor slab above. You lose half your heat transfer. If the channels are too short, less than 4 inches, the draft chokes and smoke backs up into the firebox. 6 to 8 inches of channel height. That is the range. Most first-time builders go too tall because it feels safer. It is not. For anyone working with an existing structure, here is an advanced variation. Instead of building the Ondol directly on the ground, construct a raised platform using a double layer of cinder blocks. This gives you a heated sleeping platform, roughly 18 inches off the ground. Same principle, same materials, same cost. The Goguryeo and Joseon builders use this exact configuration for aristocratic bedrooms. And for anyone with access to a rocket mass heater, the exhaust from the burn tunnel can be routed through Ondol channels instead of a traditional bench. Same flue, same thermal mass principle, combined efficiency. That setup gives you a cooking surface, a heated floor, and near zero emissions from one fire. Now here is what this system will not do. It will not heat a 2,000 square foot open concept modern house. This is a single room system, 100 to 200 square feet per Ondol. For a larger structure, you build multiple Ondols, each serving one room. That is how traditional Korean homes worked. Each room had its own firebox and its own flue network. Real performance data. A properly built 100 square foot Ondol, fired with about 10 to 15 pounds of hardwood, will maintain a surface temperature of 80 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 to 18 hours. The floor nearest the firebox will run hotter, closer to 100 degrees. The floor near the chimney will sit around 70 to 75. That gradient is not a flaw, it is a feature. The hot zone is where you sleep, the warm zone is where you sit. The cool zone is where you store food. The entire room is zoned by physics, not by a programmable thermostat. Ambient air temperature in the room will stabilize at roughly 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, even when outside temperatures are below freezing. That is not central heating comfort. That is survival comfort with dignity. And it costs nothing to operate beyond the wood. Compare that to a modern hydronic radiant floor system. Same principle, same result, except the modern version requires a $3,000 to $9,000 boiler, a circulating pump drawing electricity, annual maintenance, and fuel to heat the water every single day. The Ondol does it with a pile of sticks and a match. One safety note framed as common sense. The seal between your floor surface and the flue channels must be absolutely smoke tight. Carbon monoxide is odorless. If you can smell smoke through the floor, do not sleep in the room. Reseal, retest. This is non-negotiable. Every traditional Korean builder understood this. The clay seal was the most inspected, most maintained component of the entire house. Treat it the same way, because this channel always gives you the full picture. 2,000 years ago, a builder in the frozen north of the Korean peninsula with no electricity, no engineering degree, no insulation rating charts, figured out that you could keep a family warm through a winter that drops to 30 below by running smoke under a floor of flat stones. He did not heat the air. He heated what people touched. He heated what they sat on, slept on, lived on. The warmth came from below, through the body, into the bones, and it lasted through the night without feeding the fire again. He passed that knowledge to his apprentice. His apprentice passed it to the next village. For 2,000 years, through kingdoms and dynasties and invasions and colonization, the knowledge moved forward. Every Korean home had one. Every builder knew how to construct one. Then, somewhere in the middle of the 20th century, as the global construction industry standardized around forced air systems, electric resistance coils, and gas-fired boilers, the knowledge stopped being taught. Not because it failed. It never failed, because a floor that lasts a century and runs on firewood is a terrible business model for a $5 billion industry. Now you have it back. You know that a single fire in the right system heats a stone floor for 18 hours. You know the materials cost less than a tank of gas. You know the design is older than the Roman Empire. You also know what a $5 billion radiant heating industry depends on you not knowing. If this changes how you think about heating your home, share this video with someone who heats with propane or oil or electric baseboard and who has never once been told that the floor itself could be the furnace. Not everyone, just one person who needs it. Knowledge like this does not disappear on its own, it gets buried. This channel digs it back up. If that sounds like something worth showing up for, subscribe. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.